Confession time. Whenever I see a comic book that's in 3D, I almost always have to buy it. I wish I could say the same about 3D movies, but the advantage of comics is that you're free to enjoy the 3D effects at your leisure before it cuts to something else like a movie does. It also helps that most 3D comics you'll find out there are ridiculously cheap. Yeah, how do you like that? Most 3D movies out there are like 15 bucks a hit, but 3D comics? You're most likely to find those in the 50-cent bin. So when I find a copy of Batgirl number 14 bearing the tagline, "Terror in the Third Dimension," and with a pair of 3D glasses portrayed, I figured this would be worth spending a couple of quarters on. Batgirl's acrobatics and Supergirl flying in 3D? Sounds like good reading to me. Also appearing in this comic is apparently Dracula, King of the Vampires, and Dracula, Prince of Darkness. Special guest appearance by Dracula, Lord of the Dance. We open up the comic, and naturally the first thing to be noticed is that it's not in 3D. Maybe this is just a more ordinary scene and they're saving the 3D for more mind-bending events like you sometimes see in comics? Nope, the entire book is drawn and colored like this. Way to go, comic. All it takes is one page to figure out that the entire premise of this is a big lie. Anyway, Batgirl and Supergirl are being strangled by someone off-panel. "Hopefully you won't hold this against me." "That's what she said." Whoa. Do women actually say that joke? I mean, a super strong bulletproof alien who can shoot lasers from her eyes I can buy, but this is just pushing it. The following splash page reveals their assailant, a monochromatic Dracula laughing blah ha ha ha, which, if the limited research I've conducted is accurate, Dracula never actually says. "That pillow fight doesn't sound half bad right now, does it?" Huh. Who knew that DC Comics was publishing slash fiction? We truly open on family game night in the household of the last Batgirl before the DC reboot, Stephanie Brown. Stephanie, however, would rather be out as Batgirl than be stuck indoors playing Scrabble with her mother. "Careful now, or I just might beat you again." "And you assume I'm not letting you win?" Well, considering how you look bored out of your skull and your narration boxes confirm that you'd rather be elsewhere, no, I don't assume that you're letting her win. The doorbell rings, and she finds Supergirl nonchalantly hovering outside. Stephanie's mom comes by to see who's there, and Supergirl quick changes into her alter ego, whom Stephanie refers to as Cara. Since I don't follow Supergirl, I'm left wondering if that's actually her real civilian name, or if Stephanie just panicked and called her by her Kryptonian name, or if the name Linda Danvers no longer applies to this modern Supergirl. Comics are confusing. They decide to hang out at Gotham U. "Must have been a slow night in Metropolis, huh?" "Row, the slowest. Gotham?" "I had 16 points on my rack and was down 3-1. "Hey, don't be so hard on yourself, Stephanie. The way you're being drawn in this comic, your rack isn't all that bad." Note to self, do not make rack jokes. Cara starts prancing around out of nowhere. "Look at this stuff. Isn't it neat?" "Please don't break into song. Please don't break into song." Comic? Can you read my mind? Can you picture the things I'm thinking of? So yeah, apparently Cara spontaneously just got really excited about college life and can't decide what to do first. "Keg party? Those never end well for me." "Pillow fight? Cara, what college movies have you been watching?" Obviously, she's been watching my internet bookmarks. This is awkward. Speaking of which, there are a lot of students still on campus. I thought that hanging around school was the last thing that college kids wanted to do on Friday nights. Anyway, despite all these people still being on campus, Stephanie and Cara are the only ones plowed over by this guy who's running off to get to some lab. "See? We met a boy." "So glad you could see what happens when I meet boys." Little known fact, college guys aren't very attracted to thin, busty blondes who wear clothes that hug their curves. "So you wanna maybe see a movie? It's in 3D. Then I guess we don't have much of a choice now, do we?" Innocent sarcasm or premonition of things to come? You make the call! And the movie in question is called Vampire's Bride Revival. You might be thinking that the word bride is spelled like that because of the all-too-90s notion of poor literacy being cool, but actually it's a movie about literal vampire brides. Meanwhile, Newton, the guy from before, makes it to the lab, who is desperate to produce some kind of results for whatever it is he's doing before the lab gets shut down for lack of funds. If this project stays active, I won't forfeit my credit, and I won't go back to being a TA! No one should have to do that! Dude, I was a TA to a high school history teacher when I was in the 6th grade. It's not that hard! Before we can get a good look at what his project is, or how it's all going terribly wrong, we cut to the theater where Vampire's Bride Revival is being shown. Doomed! I am doomed! Doomed forever to be alone! Alone! Pfft. Alone? Lame. Oh, come on, you're gonna laugh at a lamentation of loneliness? If you're gonna mock the dialogue from some horror film from the 1930s, you should look at this.
You know, I like horses. I grew up with them.
Yes, I can see that when I look at you.
You see? Much funnier. I can't believe they converted this old movie into 3D. Me neither. Except for a very small handful of shots, I can't imagine Dracula being all that visually stimulating when converted to 3D.
Who wants to eat fly?
You do, ya loony.
Not when I can get nice fat spiders.
Yeah.
And yeah, they say it's a different movie, but it's so Bela Lugosi's Dracula. And speaking of converting it to 3D, I thought that the idea was to convert it to stereoscopic 3D. What's with the anaglyph? A bright flash of light overcomes the theater, and Dracula literally leaps off the screen, naturally giving his somehow classic, and yet non-existent catchphrase, Blah! Woo! And Cara thinks this is all part of the movie, completely forgetting that 3D is only supposed to work if you're staring straight ahead at the screen. The world's greatest detective, you are not. Following Stephanie's lead, Cara takes off her glasses. Now I can see why you wanted me to lose the glasses. Now you see why I stay in on Friday nights. Wait, I thought you didn't want to stay inside on Friday nights. Make up your mind. You game for a team-up? Always! Again, I don't follow Supergirl, but if her first instinct to a situation is to tear off her civilian clothes instead of just taking them off, this just makes me hope that she has a part-time job that pays her well enough so she can afford new clothes every day. Aren't you gonna... you know, not unless you want to see my bra. Any objections, audience? Does it have a bat on it? I assure you that it does not. And Stephanie treats her to an icy stare that would make Mr. Freeze's tech look like a window fan. Yikes. Anyway, the not Bela Lugosi Dracula looms over a potential victim, but Supergirl intervenes and gets slapped away. He then gets a bunch of batarangs thrown at him, which I guess emits some kind of a goop that slows him down. You might want to work on your manners. Me work on my manners? You were just riffing on my movie not 2 minutes ago. That's just rude. Here's a question. Where did Stephanie get her batsuit? It's not under her clothes, and we don't see her scrambling for her purse with the same urgency that Supergirl had when she ripped off her sweater, so where did it come from? Minutes later, Batgirl and Supergirl are examining Dracula with Newton. He explains that his experiment was to create a force field that an image could be projected onto. But it seems the theater took the brunt of the blast. It only lasted for a second, and since film runs at 24 frames per second, you've got your 24 Draculas!
Of course! Don't you know anything about science?
Supergirl, you following any of this? Of course I am. I'm a scientist by guild. Yeah, you just keep telling yourself that, sweetie. How do we stop them? With these. These control rods should be able to destabilize the Dracula's photon matrices. High impact should do the... So, this force field was designed so that anyone could just destroy it by poking it with a stick? Apparently you just blew all of the college's funds on reinventing the bubble thing.
Fucking bubbles!
So we have to drive a stake into Dracula's heart, then? Well, yeah, if you want to go all nerd on it. This coming from a 300-pound science major who spends his Friday nights working in a lab. We then cut to Requisite Gotham Dance Club, where 3 Draculas are currently getting their groove on. Apparently these Draculas can cover a lot of distance in a short time. Batgirl and Supergirl smash through the ceiling, raining dozens of glass shards on top of the hapless civilians within. Supergirl is accosted by one of them, and Batgirl stabs it in the back. Batgirl is confused by Supergirl's vulnerability to these things, thinking that only kryptonite could hurt her. There are all kinds of little hiccups. Magic, electricity, sometimes robots if they're big enough. Let's see, what else could kill me that I could talk loudly about? They spend the rest of the night hunting down the other Draculas. It's at this point that I really have to question what is going on here exactly. A second-long force field blast makes 24 physical manifestations of images projected from a movie? Okay, I'll buy that. But why only the Dracula and not his victim? Why not any of the scenery? Supergirl points out that these things are hollow, that they're literally nothing but light. How does light stay in character, being born full of how it's doomed to be alone? How does light figure out that it needs to feed on human blood to survive? How does it learn how to use a Segway? How does it know how to buy economy-class airline tickets to Prague? How did it even buy those tickets if it doesn't have any money? Who would sell airline tickets to 3 identical Draculas? Why do they even want to go to Prague, which was never a part of Transylvania? These 2 pages also remind me of The Batman vs. Dracula, a movie which sounds dumber than it actually is. This one Dracula was giving the Batman a ton of trouble. How are Batgirl and Supergirl disposing of them this easily? Maybe it's because they're only light structures, but as fast as these things are moving around, it almost suggests that they actually have the enhanced abilities of a vampire. In fact, seeing as how Supergirl needs to be rescued by a non-powered ordinary human, that should mean that they would have a lot more trouble dealing with these Draculas. They chase the 24th Dracula to the top of a building, and he's still reciting his lines from the movie. I made a choice to stand apart, to do what I thought was right, and this is my reward.
Hunted. Despised. Living like an animal.
Another question. How does a single frame of film memorize several seconds of dialogue? Nothing sadder than a crying Dracula. It's not what Twihards seem to think. If I had a nickel every time I've heard that... You'd have a nickel? I'd have a nickel. Wait, where'd he go?
Never underestimate your opponent.
This then brings us back to our opening page, with Dracula holding Batgirl and Supergirl by their necks. Stake! Behind him! On the roof! What about those silly putty batarangs? You seem to have plenty of those. They try to appeal to him, but he simply says, "For I am doomed." Crap, he's on loop. If he's on loop, shouldn't he just be going through the motions of the particular scene from which he comes? Or is there a Batgirl and Supergirl strangling scene in this movie? And then, well, I'm really not sure what happens here. Some light shoots out of Dracula's temple, and then he just throws the girls behind him toward the stake? This comic has been pretty nicely drawn so far, but the art in this scene just confuses me. With the last stake in their possession, the 2 superheroines dispose of the final Dracula. We then cut to some time later in the aftermath of the girls having a pillow fight. And I can't quite tell from this angle, but since she didn't have her pajamas with her at the beginning of the story, and since we never see her fly back home to fetch them, I'm just going to assume that Cara's in her underwear here. Nice. She quick changes back into Supergirl, and they promise to see more of each other in between fighting crime and saving the world. Please don't leave. So Supergirl leaves Stephanie alone with her mother. Did you have a good time with your friend? The best. And so that was Batgirl number 14. It's nicely drawn, and it's nice seeing these 2 superheroines do what is essentially a girls' night out, but the science portrayed within it is kind of head-scratching at times. The Draculas being that easily defeatable is definitely a disappointment, and again, it's not in 3D like it suggests it is. But hey, it only cost me 50 cents, so I can't really be that too pissed off at it. See you later.
don't know who you are, just a friend from another star. Here I am, like a kid out of school, holding hands with a gun. I'm a fool. Will you look at me, quivering like a little girl, shivering? You can see right through me. Can you read my mind? Can you picture the things I'm thinking of? Wondering why you